There's a magical place between waking and sleeping where you're still aware. And the experiences that you have in your dream, you can remember in your physical body. And I'm going to kind of go back to the time when I was about, I believe it was about 14 years old. And I was given a choice on the path that I was going to take throughout my life. I'm not sure if everybody's had a dream like this. I'm going to suspect yes, everybody's had this opportunity. But I recall that there was a being next to me. He was, at the time, I thought, extremely powerful. I mean, I could just feel power coming off of him. And he had no face, or at least I couldn't see his face. I could see his figure, his body. And what he did was, he gave me visions. He gave me a choice. And he did it through visions, is a better way to put it. Now, before you start to go off and say, John, this was just a dream, there's a difference between a dream, a regular dream that we have, and an experience that we have. When you have a dream with, if you want to call them celestial beings, or a better term would be advanced being, or beings that are already self-aware, or who have self-mastery, those dreams feel real, just as real as me sitting here right now. It's just as solid. The only difference is that I'm not in my physical body. Now, one of the first things that you need to understand is when you're dealing with a higher being, and I hate to use the term higher being, better term to use is more advanced being. When they speak to you, they also speak to you in what's called knowings. They'll send you a knowing to where you know it's the truth. Oftentimes, the words, the actual verbal telepathic words that they use are minimal. They may just say a word or two. But in that word or two, they send a knowing, which contains the whole of what they're trying to transmit. It's a better way than trying to use words, okay? Because you actually connect to it, and you can see that path, or you can see what it is that they're trying to tell you. So, the first thing that he said to me was, you can have this. And the way that he spoke, another way to know when you're speaking to a higher being, is they speak in edicts, is the best way to put it. When they speak, you know it's the truth. You know it is. It's an edict. Okay, it's like a declaration, is the best way to put it. And I'm going to try to mimic how he said it for you. But he said it kind of like this. You will have this. When he did so, I saw my future, is the best way to put it. Or actually, I felt what the future was. I didn't see the details of it, but I could feel, I knew what this future could be. And it was the possibility of me taking the mundane path. I could see that I would have a family. I could see that I would have a job. I could see that I would be extremely successful. It was one of my choices. And he said, or you can have this. And I got an image real quick of, the best way to put it is power and prestige. But there was a feeling of the magical about it, of going beyond. And remember, I was about 14 at the time, okay? So I really had very few, shall we say, esoteric terminologies that I could use to explain it. But I knew that it was magical would be the best way to put it. And magical not in the sense of what you guys might, or traditionally is used with magical. In other words, I would understand, again, I studied ESP a little bit, I always had an interest in it. But the best way to put it is, I would be able to understand the nature of the mind and nature of reality. Why are we here? What's our purpose here? What is here? Those questions that have nagged man since the dawn of time. Who am I? I would have these answers. But it would be a whole different path that I would have to take versus the path of the mundane, the first path that he showed me. So he gave me an option of being a normal person or being able to move on, follow the path. At the time I didn't know it, but he was really offering me the path. Well, let's see, we're going on, what, about 50 years later, something like that. Not quite that, but, long enough. Something like 45 years later. I think again, in the dream, I don't remember answering him. But I do know, and I remember feeling drawn to what he told me. I felt drawn to that second path, that path of transcendence that he was talking about, or that he showed me. And that was my choice, because that's where my desire went. And little did I know is it was the beginning of my occult training. But you may say to yourself, but I want to follow the path, but I've never had a dream. I was never given a choice like that. And it feels as if I'm not progressing along the path. Or perhaps you haven't been given that choice, but I want to let you know that you can experience that. You can have that choice. And to do that, let me go back again, okay? We are all connected, and I'm going to use a term, the matrix. In the past, they used to talk about the tapestry and the fates weaving the tapestries, all right? Tapestry was a good terminology at that time, but modern man can handle the concept of a matrix of connectedness, I think, a little bit better than the older concept of a tapestry. So there's a matrix of connectiveness, and every intent that you have sends a ripple out along that matrix, sends that energy out. Now those beings that I was talking about, the ones that speak in edicts, well, there are beings that are connected to the matrix. Best analogy to give you would be like a spider sitting on a web. They're searching and waiting for a signal. When you do an intent to understand yourself and understand the nature of reality, to where it's something that you're intending and that you really want, it sends off a flare, and they can sense it and see it. Think of it as like a flare. It is the best way to put it. Sets off a bright point, and those beings that are looking for that energy will see it, and they're going to notice you. And that's the first step, is to be noticed. Now, I also recall at that time when I was 14, I was really researching ESP. And I remember I had that, remember the first of the 10 bulls where you're searching within the valley and you can't find the trail of the ox? I was kind of at that point at 14. I knew that there was something else out there. I could sense it. I could feel it. And I knew I could connect to it. And I started to develop a strong desire to connect to that, connect to the unknown. And I recall my intent, I did a lot of studying, and my intent was to understand it. That was the flare that I threw out. Little did I know, again, I didn't have the experience, but you don't need to have the esoteric experience or the occult knowledge to be able to do it. It's a natural function. And I sent out that flare, and that's why that being came to me. You can do the same. It depends on how much intent that you put into it. How much desire? How much do you really want to know? The path isn't easy. It's a lonely path. And you have to walk it on your own, because only you can transform yourself. But looking back on my decision, did I make the right choice? Again, we're talking, what, 45 years ago or so. I'm going to have to say yes. It wasn't easy, and again, it was lonely. And I didn't have a lot of the things that I would say those that took the mundane path have, such as a family, etc. But if I was to do it again, yeah, I would pick the path. The things that I have seen, the things that I know now, the visions that I have had, they're priceless. And you can do it too.